Hi, I'm Femi OK. Today on the stream, 3 stories that we have been watching closely. England's loss in the Euro 2020 on Sunday has once again exposed deep-seated racism that has gone hand in hand with the sport. Will the impact this time be any different? We also take a look at South Sudan at 10 years old. Is there much to celebrate? And finally, Haiti, where an assassination has led to a power vacuum. And now questions remain about the Caribbean nation's future. Your comments and questions are an important part of the stream. You can join the conversation live on YouTube. We know you have a lot to say. We start with racists in England. Here's Brian Knight.
As appalled as I was by all of the racist comments, it really didn't come as a surprise to me, especially considering how widespread racism is in this country. But I think that kind of racism is, symptomatic of all of these social and political issues that have been unaddressed for decades. But in terms of the racism that the players got, I think that the Prime Minister and Home Secretary need to take accountability for the role that they played in encouraging this kind of behavior. But if we ask ourselves, how to kind of solve this, how to move on, I don't think we can move on until people are willing to accept that, racism is an issue in this country. And then from that space, we can, discuss it and find a way forward. But being in denial won't get us anywhere.
Oh, goodness me, we're starting a really heavy conversation. Returning to the stream, CJ Thomas. He's a presenter at Arsenal Fan TV and a former professional football player. CJ, I'm in a reflective mood. It almost feels like the last few days took me back to when I was a kid, Chelsea playing at home, and we all stayed indoors because we were scared of the hooligans, right? And it's a terrifying time. And I thought maybe somehow we were beyond that. We were more sophisticated, we were more worldly, and we weren't a bunch of racists. That's where I'm coming to this conversation from. How about you?
Yeah, Femi, do you know what? It's sad. It's getting exhausting having these conversations about race. But again, I'm with you, if I'm completely honest. Naively, I thought it was going to be different this time. And I say that because I connect so much to the England side. Marcus Rashford, feeding the country, giving out school meals to the needed. Raheem Sterling stand up to racial inequalities. There were so many players that looked like me and I looked up to, and I thought this is something different. This is an England team I've never been able to associate myself with so deeply. And then again we lost, and we went from heroes, everyone cheering on the black players, to the villains and getting reminded about our skin colour as it seems to be the story all the time. And I'm tired of it. I really am.
I'm going to show a moment, because you were covering the Euros for Don Robbie, and this is on YouTube. So I'm just going to show a moment where the premise for this show happened. Like, you see this. This is when it happened. Yeah. Let's have a look. Oh, it's painful to play this, but let's go.
Pickford saved it. Saka's now. Saka's now. Saka's now. Saka's now. Come on, Saka. Come on, Saka. Come on.
Saka has to score. And it's Italy who are the champions of Europe.
CJ, you can be disappointed with your team's performance, but why be racist?
Femi, I wish I had the answer to that.
Right.
I always say you can be critical, never personal. I always say that you can be critical of your team. Like you said, I work at AFTV. It's very much part of my job to criticize the team and analyze and have my opinion, but I'm never, ever personal. And I even said at the end of that video that you all just watched there, I said in my outro, I said, it's awful that the players missed a penalty, three of them being black, but I pray that there's no racial abuse after this. And lo and behold, the next morning I wake up and all the players have been racially abused. Players like Marcus Rashford, who I said again, helped feed the country. He's someone I work very close with. I'm his body double. I do a lot of his campaigns. He is an absolute gent. He's a role model, a superhero, in my opinion. That's what he is to me. He's a superhero, and he's a role model to many kids. And I know he'd be devastated to have seen his mural be disfaced and words like the N-word put on it and go back to your country. Yeah. Yes, there's been great support since that, but it's not needed, Femi. It's awful.
So let me just look at this. This is the Marcus Rashford mural, which is a beautiful mural. They covered up they covered up the curse words pretty quickly and the insults pretty quickly. This conversation is not just about the ugliness, though, that comes out of football. I would be remiss if I didn't show this, right? This is incredible. Look at all of these people here. Black Lives Matter, England, 3 Lions, and all of these people saying what is happening in England right now with racism against English players born here. Right?
Yeah.
That's not right. Does that balance out your mood? Does it balance out the country?
Femi, I'm going to be honest,
CJ?
I wish it did.
Yeah.
I really wish it did.
Right.
I really wish it did, because it looks all lovely now. And you know what? It looked all lovely when we was in the semi-finals and we was winning. But we'll always be reminded of our colour when things aren't going well. And it all looks good, everyone coming together for it. It is a nice gesture and it's nice to see people come together. But people came together for the Black Lives Matter movement. But nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. And that's the real truth of it all. Will change really happen? In my opinion, no. Raheem Sterling got asked the same question. Have things improved since you stood up to racism in football? And he was honest. I'm glad he was. He said no as well. There's millions of campaigns out there right now. Stop online hate. Hope United. Stand up to racism. Show racism a red card. Kick it out. But if I'm honest, if it's not affecting the country's pockets or people's pockets, it's not going to change. I was last on here speaking about the Super League. Look how fast and how quick that went down.
That was fast, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Can you imagine if the fans said, we are not going to deal with racism anymore, and they came out the same way they did for the Super League?
Imagine.
We'd be done.
Imagine.
We'd have nothing more to talk about. Okay, here we are on YouTube. This is Anthony Brown. Racism has always been here. I'm assuming, Anthony, you're in the UK. It's normal.
Do you know how awful that comment is, but how truthful it is?
Right.
He's right. He's right. I expected it. When Saka missed the last penalty in the game against Italy, I expected it. I shouldn't expect it. I was scared to travel home from London, from the capital, to go back to my house after that penalty miss. And I should never feel like that. I was born here. But he's right there. It's normal. Racism is normal in this country. It's embedded in the pillars of football culture, in my opinion, football fan culture, sorry, and the UK. It's sad, but all we can do is speak about it, because right now I don't see any changes happening.
So earlier
as
on,
heavy as it is, sorry. It's very heavy.
This is a very depressing conversation. Earlier on today at the British Parliament, the Labour Party leader, Keir Starmer, brought up this whole issue of racism in the UK, in England, and then put Prime Minister Boris Johnson on the spot. And the inference is that he was encouraging those kind of attitudes, and he couldn't do that for a period of time and then say, this is awful, this is terrible, we're not racist, this is not who we are. Let me just go to Parliament, British Parliament, from a few hours ago. Let's have a look.
In the last few days, everybody has seen England's black players have been the targets of disgusting racist abuse following Sunday's match. Disgusting. And this is really simple, Mr. Speaker. Either the Prime Minister is with the England players in their stand against racism, or he can defend his own record, those of his ministers and some of his MPs. But he can't have it both ways. So can he tell the House, does he now regret failing to condemn those who booed England players for standing up to racism, yes or no?
Mr. Speaker, we made it absolutely clear that no one should boo the England team. And Mr. Speaker, what we're doing now is following the racist abuse that our players sadly suffered on Sunday night and thereafter, we're taking practical action. So in addition to changing the football banning order regime, last night I met representatives of Facebook, of Twitter, of TikTok, of Snapchat, of Instagram, and I made it absolutely clear to them that we will legislate to address this problem, Mr. Speaker, in the online harms bill, and unless they get hate and racism off their platforms, they will face fines amounting to 10% of their global revenues. And we all know, Mr. Speaker, that they have the technology to do it.
I mean, yeah, it's a nice gesture. I like it. What he's saying is right there, but Boris is known to say sexist remarks, racist remarks, derogatory terms he's just as bad. Yes, he's covering himself now because there's so many eyes on him, and he's the Prime Minister. But if I'm honest, I don't see it changing. I respect the sense that he said that they're gonna look to it with Facebook, Snapchat, WhatsApp, and Instagram. But again, I gave an example before. When I put anything to do with COVID on my story, it gets flagged up straight away. And I have a song that's got music rights and copyrights infringements, it gets taken down straight away.
Yeah.
When it comes to racism, you know, you can be left there. You can make 1 million accounts, and you can't trace back to who said it. Nothing's been done properly by Boris Johnson, and I'd like to see what he said there go into action. I'll be very intrigued to see if the N word is banned from Instagram, or go back to your country. If these people are actually really taking time to find these perpetrators and ignorant people and taking them down, and even coming off social media and being blocked. For me, it's not a harsh enough punishment. So that's where another issue where it's not going to change. It really isn't. You get a slap on the wrist. There's many examples of just a slap on the wrist from racism. So, yeah, I mean, you can see I'm normally a charismatic person, but I'm always tired.
I love it when a charismatic person disguises themselves as a charismatic person. So humble. This is a rubbish conversation, CJ. And let me show you here, just here on my laptop. We have the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge. They're sickened by the racist abuse. And then just look down here. It's actually signed by William, right? So you know he typed that tweet out himself. He didn't get his staff to do that. We have the FA. If you're racist, we don't want you to be part of our fan club. We don't want you to support us. We have Harry Kane here talking about the vile racist abuse. If you abuse anyone on social media, you're not an England fan, and we don't want you. CJ, we're not gonna. This is not the last time we're having this conversation, right?
Femi, before we move on there, quick. So with two of those people, one of those people I can agree, Harry Kane. I believe he does stand up players. When it comes to William, and
I hear the subtext there. If you said Harry,
that's what I was going to say. The Royals, they can say that, but when you look at Meghan and Harry's situation, I mean, that says it all.
That's what people on YouTube
race.
were saying, actually. I thought it was off topic, but it's on topic, CJ.
It's on topic.
Yeah, it's on topic.
It's on topic. Yeah, you can be supportive, but if you look in your own bloodline, in your own family, there's been clear representation of discrimination and racism. Same with the FA, in a sense of there's been loads of campaigns for days. Nothing's changed. So yeah, that's it. That's it on those last two.
Racist business as usual in England. Thank you, CJ.
Thank you.
Let's move on. We're going to head to South Sudan. A decade ago, South Sudanese celebrated their country's independence from Sudan with great fanfare. Today, peace is built on a shaky ceasefire, and the humanitarian situation is dire. Here is Arafat Jamal with his thoughts on how to move forward.
South Sudan at 10, a nation in turmoil, but a nation with hope as well. As we move ahead, I suggest that the international community reimagine and recommit how it helps this country. Let's listen to the people. Let's listen to the hundreds of thousands of refugees who voted with their feet and returned home. Let's listen to the farmers who are planting against all odds, and to the students who are striving for education, no matter their circumstances. Let's work with the government and the people of South Sudan. Less giving, more partnership, moving ahead and building the nation.
Oh my goodness, that is a positive spin on what's been happening in South Sudan for the last 10 years. We're joined now by Al Jazeera's Hibern Morgan, a true expert on covering South Sudan. Hi, Hibern. It's so nice to have you here because I remember that first day when South Sudan was created as a country. There were fireworks, there was jubilation, there was excitement. 10 years later, what is your take on how South Sudan is doing, where South Sudan is right now?
I mean, it hasn't really grown up, has it? You know, there are lots of issues that still remain unresolved. And it's not just from 2011 when South Sudan was born and created, no. The issues that were not resolved since from 2004-2005 when the Comprehensive Peace Agreement was signed. We're looking at issues of reconciliation, healing, truth between the various factions, between the various ethnicities and tribes and communities in South Sudan. So those issues were not addressed by the Comprehensive Peace Agreement. They were not addressed with the birth of South Sudan. And 10 years on, they were the main reason behind the fractures, behind the so many splinter groups and the armed groups that were created in 2013, just 2 years after South Sudan's independence. So up to date, when you look at South Sudan, you've seen 2 peace agreements that were signed, the last one that's currently still holding, but very, very shaky. There's still no move to try to reconcile the various armed groups, the various tribes that were fighting against each other. So it's like South Sudan has not learned from the past. Look at this peace agreement that they're currently trying to implement, and then you look at the comprehensive peace agreements. There were many shortcomings in that peace agreement that is again mirrored in this one, and it's just going to keep South Sudan on this shaky path that it is on right now.
Yeah, I was really struck by how the president of South Sudan and the vice president of South Sudan marked the 10-year anniversary. They were in 2 very different places, and that says something about perhaps their relationship, but also how South Sudan is faring right now. Let's just have a listen in to what they said.
On my part, I assure you that I will not return you back to war again. Let us all work together to recover the lost decade and put our country back to the path of development in this new decade.
Our celebration today is very important as the whole world looks at us as we commemorate this 10th independence anniversary.
Hey, but to be fair, South Sudan is a very young country, and there were lots of challenges when it was being founded. So where do you think the country is going now? Arafat mentioned where we've got young people, we've got farmers, there's potential. It was looking at the potential.
Yeah, I mean, it has always been there. When you look when South Sudan was created in 2011, the potential was there, the youth were there. But the foundation is what was missing. Femi, you look at civil societies, they were not really strong enough. They're growing stronger. The youth are starting to make it clear that, they want change for the better. They want a better future. They're demanding justice, an end to corruption, an end to the conflict that has torn South Sudan apart. But they're also demanding justice, accountability, reconciliation, truth, healing between communities. And that's where you can find the key to South Sudan's future. That's what I think. I think the fact that so many people are against each other, people now identify themselves based on their ethnicities and their tribes. And it's really shaking South Sudan apart. It's tearing South Sudan apart, actually. But the good thing is, when you look at the youth and you speak to them, they seem to understand that this is where the weakness is and this is what we need to tackle to be able to move on forward. And so civil societies are growing stronger. The youth are starting to talk about it more and more. Women are starting to talk about their rights. They're starting to talk about what they want to see South Sudan in the near future become. So it's there, the potential is there, but then the thing is you have to take a step to get there. Right now, again, back to this peace agreement, it's very shaky. The 2 sides, you've heard from President Salva Kiir, the Vice President Riek Machar, 2 sides that were fighting each other for years. You've heard from them, but then they didn't stand together on this day. South Sudan's 10th birthday, they were not together. Everybody was in different places to give their remarks and their speeches on this day. They need to show some kind of unity. They need to, at least, so that their forces on the ground, their people on their ground, also try to mirror that. And if you don't show that you're united, if you don't show that you can get over the years of conflict, animosity, you can't move forward.
Yeah, but thank you so much. Just reviewing the past 10 years of South Sudan, we really appreciate you. I know you'll be back on the stream in the future. And now to Haiti. It has been 1 week since the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse in his home sent shockwaves through the country. Haiti's parliament is dormant, and now 2 men are claiming to be the country's prime minister. How does Haiti find its way out of this situation? Here's Malcolm Neal.
So when I think about what this means for Haiti and what's next, I'm thinking beyond just the immediate rush to go help Haiti and bring aid that we see so often play out in moments of crisis for Haiti. My thoughts are more on how Haitians can actually write a new narrative for Haiti, right? What that means is that we've been saying, as Haitians in Haiti and Haitians in the diaspora, that it's up to Haitians to write our own history, that we're done with the neo-colonialist policies, the imperialist policies that have led to Haiti's current and ongoing crises.
Joining us now, Professor Jean-Eddy St. Paul. He is founding director of the Haitian Studies Institute at the City University of New York and is a political and cultural sociologist. Professor, what I wanted to do is not ask you about the latest news, but ask you about this idea of the Haitian narrative, owning it as Haitians. Because once again, we have another headline making international news, and it's not good news. As a Haitian, as a professor, as a sociologist, there's so much that you can help us understand about what does Haiti do and how does Haiti get into this situation? And how do you get out of it, Professor?
Thank you so much for having me. That's a great question.
Yeah.
I do think, how do we get there? It's important briefly to inform our people, our audience, that Haiti was the first Black, not republic, but the first Black empire since 1804. But the Haitian Revolution was the only successful anti-slavery and anti-racist revolution. So since that revolution was interpreted as a threat for the interest of the master of the world, the capitalist system. So Haiti has been isolated. Our ancestors, they had to pay $20 billion to
They had to pay reparations to France, for letting them go. Yeah, exactly. It's extraordinary. So are you saying then, Professor, Haiti is still paying for that in multiple ways? Because then how do you change the narrative? Bring us forward. Bring us to now.
So the narrative, first, we have to change many things. One of the things that we have to change is we have to speak with truth. So there is a dominant narrative in the mainstream media that Haiti is the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. That is false. That is not true. Because if Haiti was the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, I wanted someone to explain to me why one of the most important embassies of the U.S. is in Haiti. So Haiti is not, so we in the media, we have to do a better job. Haiti is not the most, the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. So at the same time that Haitians were paying to France, but also the mainstream media never told us that, for instance, for 19 years, the U.S. occupied Haiti between 1915 and 1934. And the first move that the U.S. did, they changed the Constitution.
So Professor, is it just, if I may, because we're almost at the end of the show, is it just a PR issue that Haiti has? Because the president was still assassinated. There was an earthquake. There was a cholera outbreak. There is a lack of resources for Haiti. There were many, many things. Are you saying that this is a PR issue, or is there something else? Just one final thought.
It is a combination of both, because you mentioned the earthquake, but remember who was the envoy to rebuild Haiti after the earthquake? It was the former U.S. President Bill Clinton. So we can see until now, we still have, those kind of neo-colonial policies against Haiti. So, and Haitian people now, they are claiming for their sovereignty.
Right.
Because
Professor,
since 1804...
Professor Jean-Eddy St. Paul, thank you for what you did is help us think about Haiti in a very different way from the way that even us sometimes on Al Jazeera are telling the news from Haiti. We will get you back because we have more to talk about. But for now, thank you very much. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you next time.